This is going to be a very jarring video. I understand that, considering the last thing that I uploaded on this channel was a meme mashup video. So to go from that to this is very stark. It's a whiplash. I understand. I completely understand. But I have a lot of shit on my mind that it's hard for me to put it in merely a text form. I can't just put this on a social media platform in any case. So it's best for me to sort of vocalize my feelings on a lot of this right now. If I sound defeated, that's because I am. If I sound tired, that's because I am. I just came back from work. I just put on a shirt. If I look dirty and disheveled, because, like I said, I haven't really had a lot of time to prep for any of this. I just have a lot of shit on my mind that I want to get off my chest right now. Because ever since I saw the headline this morning that Tim Smith died, it's been difficult. And now this is the third video that I've done detailing in the past year now, detailing about what happens and how should we react if our heroes, our influences pass away and die. Because it's difficult. It was hard for me. I'm still processing it. It's been hard for me all fucking day at work. I had a coworker of mine talk to me "Hey, are you okay?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But she kept on bugging. It's like, "Are you sure you're okay?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." It's like, how am I supposed to describe? It's hard for me to talk to regular people about "Oh yeah, this cult musician just passed away and died." You guys would understand it because you guys are music nerds, presumably if you're watching this video from my channel. But it's difficult. It's difficult, I guess, in that regard and sign. But I remember it was 7 a.m. waking up. I was trying to have breakfast, and I go on Twitter, and the first thing I saw was a Quietus article, and it had Tim Smith's picture on it. And for a split second, my first thought was, "Oh, I mean, it's the Quietus. They've talked about cardiacs before. Let's see what they have to say this time." And the headline reads, "Tim Smith, frontman of cult band Cardiacs, dies at 59." And I am staring at my computer screen, dumbstruck, like a deer in the headlights. I looked at it and I didn't know how to react at the time. I made a couple of quick posts on social media, and then I just turned off my phone for a second and just cried for a bit. I didn't even eat the rest of my breakfast. I took 2 bites of my sandwich, and that's the only thing I've had today. I haven't eaten anything since then, and it's been difficult for me. For those of you who have followed me throughout the years, you know how much Cardiacs means to me. Because they're a band that I have constantly recommended on this channel. If you go on my RYM page, you know that Cardiacs is highly rated on my stuff. My #1 favorite album of all time, even now, even this day, is still Sing to God by Cardiacs. Cardiacs is a very important band to me. And even knowing about Tim Smith's health problems and health issues, to still have him gone guts me. As someone who was too young to experience any of this while they were still active, it guts me. It destroys me. To paint you a picture of where I kind of come in with the whole Cardiacs thing, it was January of 2015. January of 2015. I remember that. I still remember that, because that was the month and the year of when I finally got into Cardiacs. And I'm on YouTube, and I get this song recommended to me. It's a song called Dirty Boy by Cardiacs, and I see this album cover. And it's the weirdest fucking thing in the world. It's not a bad album cover, but it's certainly not a good album cover. And that's what usually intrigues me when it comes to music. It's never judge a book by its cover, which is why I always like album covers with sort of this strangeness to it, that some album covers that intrigue me. It's why I fell in love with Lift to Experience in the first place, because it's like, it's a Christian rock band that's using a pen and pixel album cover art. It's why I got heavily into Mutilation with Vampires of Black Imperial Blood, because it wasn't a typical black metal album cover. It was these two French teenagers sitting next to a china cabinet. It was very unorthodox. So seeing this album cover, and it's like, this next to it is like this 8-9 minute long song, and it's like, okay, well, I'm intrigued. And the minute that guitar rang, and the moment that initial melody starts, that ba 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 ba, I got hooked in instantly. And throughout the entirety of this song, it kept on building and building and building and building. It just kept on going, and it reaches to this amazing climactic point with this gigantic wall of sound behind it, and non-stop screaming, which I assume they just put in as a looping effect, but non-stop screaming and this giant wall of noise. And I immediately fell in love. I had to check out this album out, but I enjoyed it at first, but it didn't become my greatest album, my personal favorite album of all time, until later on. And by later on, I mean the rest of January, and really the rest of 2015, when I went through the entirety of Cardiacs. And going through Cardiacs in a chronological order was one of the most satisfying experiences to have as a music fan. You start out in the early 80s, where it was basically that full lineup of Tim Smith, his brother Jim, his then wife Sarah Cutts, William Drake, Tim Key, Dominic Luckman. Am I forgetting anyone? That was the core lineup at the point. That was the core lineup during the 80s run of Cardiacs, yes. And you listen to their you listen to Toy World and Seaside first, and it's this very eccentric, proggy pop music. And I don't want to say progressive punk rock. My computer screen just fell asleep. Did you see that? Look at that. And so, you have this really eclectic, eccentric style of psychedelic progressive punk rock. I don't want to say progressive punk rock, or pronk as they call it. I think they tested that specific phrase and style, but it caught me. It was very eccentric. It was very jumpy, and I was very familiar with a lot of weird 80s new wave shit during the time. It's not something that's new to me. I've heard of Devo and Oingo Boingo before, but this was taking an absurdity level to another extreme. It was definitely something goofier than the usual hodgepodge and the contemporaries of that era. And that's what intrigues me the most about Cardiacs, is that they were extremely cartoonish. I love the absurd. I love craziness. It's a reason why I'm a huge fucking fan of cartoons to this day, is because I love crazy shit. And so listening to Cardiacs it was like this cartoon character doing 8-ball and then going straight up to space. It's very weird. It's very eccentric. So listening to those early albums, I did experience that. And it's like, well, this is a very cartoony sound. I bet these guys look like just regular schmoes, And no, they were dressed up as clowns. They're fucking dressed up as clowns. Tim is beating up on Jim. It's just this new level of wackiness to it, and you even watch their lo-fi home video videos and music videos, And it's so astounding and it's so intriguing to look at. And this was something that I had never seen or experienced in my entire life. And I progressed through their stuff in the 80s. And what ended up happening in the 80s is that you end up getting this progress in sound of that sort of level of cartooniness into these albums right here on Land and the Sea and Little Man in the House and the Whole World Window, where they continue developing their sound, but all of a sudden it feels more big and bombastic and epic. And I'm sorry, there's gonna be awkward silences and breaks. Trying to get my thoughts into one, and what I love about these albums is how intricate they all are. Not only are they absolutely insane albums, but on a technically speaking level, it's so... everything just hits it at its right moment. Everything is paced well. All the instruments are lined up well. I would honestly, even though I'd say that Sing to God is my personal favorite album of all time, I would say that their best album, in my opinion, is this guy right here, Little Man in the House and the Whole World Window. Because to me, it brings that sort of melting point of craziness and epicness into one slab of sound. And so they have this amazing bombastic approach to their music, and it all accumulates to sort of an end of an era around the 90s, around the time that their live album Mare's Nest came out. That, or when they performed that live album, is kind of the end of that specific era. They had this weird, like, hard restart, so to speak, where half the band members left. Tim Key, Sarah Cutts, and William Drake were gone, and you end up restarting the band with Heaven Born and Ever Bright. Jim and Tim are still there, as well as the original drummer Dominic Luckman, but they bring in this other guy named John Poole, and you have this... it's still an evolution to their sound. It's still this amazingness to the sound, but it's not as huge as the previous albums. But you know that there's something fucking brewing. It is a stripped back version of what they were doing in the late 80s, but there's something brewing. And it wasn't just Heaven Born Ever Bright, but Tim Smith's solo material and his other material in the 90s with William Drake and Sarah Cutts with the project Sea Nymphs, where you have stuff like Sea Nymphs and Heaven Born Ever Bright, and they feel like these stripped back versions of what Cardiacs are able to do, especially with Sea Nymphs, where it's very stripped back to fit a more progressive chamber pop style sound, but you still find that Cardiac's level of craziness and cartoonishness and eccentricity in those albums, or in that specific album and the archival album that came out around, I believe, 2016, 2015. And not only is it an amazing album, I don't know where I'm going at with that. I'm sorry. Sometimes I have like random fill-in thoughts or fill-in words that kind of slip out of my mouth. But it all builds up to the culmination of Sing to God, where Sing to God feels like the celebration of a band. It feels like the celebration of a band's past and present and future, that this is the story that we have told, and the story continues. And the story did continue with Guns. Guns was a wonderful, it was a little bit more psychedelic than usual, in my opinion, album, and a really nice follow-up to Sing to God. And then you have the Ditzy Scene, which was a single that came out as a hype, so to speak, for their next newest album, LSD, and then the story ends. What? The story shouldn't end that way. From there on, it's like you start this story well, and then all of a sudden it stops abruptly at Ditzy Scene and the announcement of LSD. And what happened, well, was the tragic incident of Tim Smith having a stroke and a heart attack. And a couple years after that, more heart problems. And that's where the difficulty sets in. Is that it felt like their story, the story of Cardiac's, abruptly ended. And the reason why I feel affected by Tim Smith's death, even with his health problems, even though he was wheelchair bound and barely spoke a damn thing, is that I wanted that fairy tale ending. I needed that happy ending where somehow, some way, Tim Smith came back. Not to a full extent, but at least able to maybe stand up and maybe sing or something. Just something for him to come back. But I got nothing. I didn't get that fairy tale ending. I didn't get that great ending. I'm an optimist, which means I'm an idiot. And I don't... And the realist pessimist side of me, when it comes to stuff like this, it's hard for me to kind of go on and cope with shit. That there is some sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, something can come out at the end of this. That's why this death hits me. Well, that's one reason why this death hits me. Is that the story, it shouldn't have ended that way. It shouldn't have ended that way. To paint you a picture of where I was at around early 2015, I fell in love, and then I fucked up, which is a story that I can tell and copy and paste over and over again with every relationship I ever had. And I needed a coping mechanism for my own sake, for my own depression, my own mental health issues. I need something like that. And it's easy to go to somber and melancholic sounding music to listen to while you're in those dire times. It's very easy. Trust me, I've been there before. But sometimes you need an energetic kick, a good kick in the ass, something to bring you hope, to bring you and fill you up with happiness. Sometimes that melancholic singer-songwriter bullshit is not gonna fucking help. You need to have that sort of happy music. And that's what Tim Smith, that's what Cardiac's brought to me, was that level of happy music. Because like I said, it's energetic, it's crazy, it's cartoony, it's something that I had never heard of before, and it's something that I yearned for. And so it was music that I looked at as music to fill me up with hope, with sincerity, with happiness. And even to this day, it's something that I need. Even now, it's something that I need. This whole COVID-19 pandemic shit, the Black Lives Matter protests, I wake up every day with hell on the corner, on the horizon. I need to have that escapism of energetic and happy music, even when times are dire. And I am not, you see me shaking. I am not in the mood right now to talk about a full extent of a lot of things. I never really am. I don't want to talk to anyone right now. If I'll be quite honest with you people, I don't want to talk to anyone that I know. I don't want to talk to any of my friends. I'm dealing with some shit right now. Because a person that I looked at as a hero, to me, is gone forever in the physical world. And I hate fetishizing and making musicians look like deities and having this sort of post-mortem martyrdom effect of all these musicians. I hate that shit. I despise that shit to a full extent. And that's a whole nother issue. That's a whole nother issue. We can talk about that another time. We can talk about the, selling Kurt Cobain's suicide notes as t-shirts another time. But the great thing about Cardiacs is that, and the great thing about Tim Smith is that he's never really gone. Now I'm going to have to unlist this video, just like the Daniel Johnston video, because I'm crying. But he's never really gone. That's the great thing about it, is that he's never really gone. And what's amazing about music in general is that, especially in this day and age of the internet, in this day and age where you can find everything easily, is that no one ever disappears. No one ever goes away. Now, look, because there's a thunderstorm going on right now. I was originally going to record this outside, but I knew that it was going to rain in a hot second, and thank God I'm inside now. But yeah, sorry for the thunderstorm. I'll open the light. But the amazing thing about music is that these singer-songwriters, these musicians, they never really disappear. That's not what happens. Someone doesn't die and their legacy doesn't just, or really their music doesn't just disappear like that. They're not automatically canceled. You know? But and to go back to the fairy tale ending, I think in a way there was a good ending to Cardiacs. When Tim Smith's health problems were reaching to an exceedingly, terrible limit, they had to start a funding page for it. And people from all over the world donated to the point where they passed their limit. And they kept on raising the bar, and the limit kept on getting passed for the donation amount kept on getting passed. And they could see how much of an impact that Cardiacs and Tim Smith made on them. I made a video in 2015 that I've unfortunately deleted. During the peak time of my addiction to Cardiacs, and also my addiction to another band called The Angelic Process, an amazing drone metal shoegaze band. And in 2008, Chris Angelus killed himself. And the great thing about The Angelic Process is that despite Chris Angelus' death, they're still there. I can happily listen to Weighing Souls with Sand on my record. I have it on vinyl, and I can listen to it on Spotify. If I'm working out or if I'm outside, I can still listen to it. I made videos about Daniel Johnston and Mark Hollis, and you know what? I can still listen to Spirit of Eden and Laughingstock. I can still listen to 1990 and Hi, How Are You? They're not gone. They will always be here. They have been immortalized. And their legacy will continue to grow. That's the great thing. That's the amazing thing about this whole thing. And though it's not the fairy tale ending that I wanted, I know that even now, in the advent of the internet, I found it out through YouTube. There are probably a few people out there that may have been lucky to that somehow found it out through me, whether it be me talking about them on my channel or through RYM. And this isn't a band that became like this fucking obscurity in the 2010s. People talked about them everywhere on forum sites. This isn't a band that's going to go away. You see video essays and reviews pop up of Cardiacs all the time. Though they felt this rumbling in them around the 2000s that maybe they saw that fans were getting there was a lot more interest in the band all of a sudden. And And though they may have not been able to play with them, and though I, as well as a lot of other young people, will never at this point witness them in their full extent, we still have their music. This is not gonna fucking go away anytime soon. It's not. You can find them on Bandcamp. You can still buy their music physically. It's not... Death is confusing. Especially people that you don't personally know. But your heroes will live on. That's the way the world goes.
End it there.